We have asked Dr. B to come and join us for a wellbeing session. So we're very, very pleased and grateful for your time, Dr. B. Thank you for joining us. And I will let you introduce yourself and move on to the session. Thank you.
It's my pleasure too, Graham. Thank you so much. And welcome everybody to this session. It's called anxiety, which you might think is not very kind to start off with, but we're going to theme it towards kindness as well. So my full name is Dr. Barbara Mariposa, Dr. B for short. I'm a medical doctor with a background in psychiatry and in public health, actually, which is even more relevant at the moment, perhaps with the pandemic going on. And what a lot of people don't know about me is that I actually performed at Glastonbury as well in my 50s. So I'm a little bit more proud of that than anything else. And so what we're going to be talking about today, and because there's so many of you, and we've had such a great response to, which shows the interest in what we're talking about. This is a bit of a one-way conversation at this point. We've got some questions that we're going to answer at the end, but we're going to talk about what's going on now, about what anxiety is, what the relationship with kindness is, and how we can create strategies to help us deal with what are really challenging times. And I think it's really important that we're realistic about just how difficult things are at the moment, and probably will continue. I think when we all went into lockdown in our various ways, we kind of thought, okay, great, okay, maybe the end of May, and here we are, middle of May, maybe June, stretching towards Christmas, really, being realistic about it. And people, I put up this picture here of it's a Jackson Pollock. I like abstract art because everybody has their own interpretation of reality, in the same way as they have their own interpretation of this picture. So how we're all responding is unique for us. It's important that we respect that. But most of us have been quite profoundly affected in the kind of like emotional shock, almost, in a way, a long drawn out shock, like a car crash in very slow motion, when we don't know when it's going to finish and what the result of that is going to be. And it takes time for us to really adapt to that, So part of this whole theme really is like, how can we be kinder to ourselves about whatever it is we are going through in reaction or in response to these challenging times that we're in. And also acknowledging that, there will be gender differences, there will be obviously unique differences to who we are as people, but I've noticed quite a strong sort of tendency for people to handle it differently emotionally. But a recent poll by the Office of National Statistics, actually, it's already a month old when it came out. I thought, like, wow, this is hot off the press. But it's already a month old, was showing that over half of us are indeed noticing that our well-being is adversely affected. And that one of the main things that's unsettling us, and that's the anxiety, isn't it? Is like, I don't know where I am, and I don't know how to plan for the future. And so what we're saying with this kind of idea of kindness is to kind of let that be okay for now. That one of the ways in which we can be kind to ourselves is to be accepting of how we're feeling. And it's interesting in relationship to anxiety, and I'll come back and touch on this more as we go along. But I'm just sort of summarizing here the things that I've noticed people are struggling with. And see where you are in relationship to this. There may be other things you'd add. There's becoming difficult for people if you're working from home, as it's called, which is very different concept now than it was 3 months ago. I think it's more like a lot of us are at home and we're doing our best to get some work done. But that porous work boundary, it's like, well, my laptop's sitting right there. So even if it's 10 o'clock at night, I might just, don't do that as an act of kindness to yourself. Really important that you're very clear about what role you're in when. So this juggling of roles, it's like, be clear about, okay, this is me at work. This is me being a parent or a partner, or if you're on your own, even more importantly, you take that work hat off, either metaphorically or in a real sense. So you don't get into this habit of working longer hours, because working too long hours doesn't necessarily mean that you get more done. And it can just increase that sort of background level of frazzle, which adds to the background level of frazzle of the uncertainty that we're experiencing at the moment. Zoom fatigue is becoming a thing. I was doing a session with some senior leaders in a team in a company yesterday, and they all agreed, as senior leaders, that what we're going to do is make sure that every meeting finishes at 10 to or 20 past the hour. So we've got a 10-minute gap between Zoom sessions, because what people are seeing is like back-to-back Zoom meetings. And this creates tensions in the brain, which you cannot then switch off. So it increases that background level of this kind of inner wobbliness. So the rapid change, the high levels of uncertainty, the sense of not really being able to know what the future holds, you know, and even as a public health doctor with that hat on, it's like, I don't know enough about the coronavirus and the epidemic or the pandemic to know how we're going to deal with this moving forward in the long term. So that sense of inner wobbliness is really putting a strain on everybody's resources, no matter how robust you think you are, is how can I be kinder to myself and actually allow that sense of like, am I safe? You know, that when the world is wobbly, it's like the external scaffolding of our lives is pretty wobbly. So how can I create inner scaffolding in order that I can answer that question, am I safe, for myself from the inside, as it were? Because one of the things that I'm going to talk about just very quickly, I like to root all of the work that I'm doing in some kind of science, the neuroscience here, very simple concept. Red blob is the amygdala. The amygdala's job, as many of you will know, is to scan the environment unconsciously. You're not in control of this, to make sure that there's no threat out there, to make sure that my survival isn't at stake, basically. Doing a great job, need it, and sometimes it takes over. And when it takes over, that's when we're anxious and it alters our perception of things. On the other hand, we've got the green blob. And if you tap your foreheads, like just behind above your eyebrow, that's like right behind that, right in front of where your prefrontal cortex is. That's the newest bit of your brain from an evolutionary perspective. And it's the bit of the brain that allows you to have a sense of self-awareness and be able to choose how you want to be in the present moment. So part of this conversation around kindness and anxiety is anxiety arises when the amygdala is in charge, the red blob, and we can calm down the red blob by intentionally engaging the green blob to kind of go, okay, how can I be kinder to myself? So one of the ways, very directly, I'm giving you some practical advice right off the top here. If you find that you tend to get anxious, even if it's something that you had before, but you might be noticing it for the first time, an input, whether that's from Zoom, from email, from webinars, but mostly from mainstream media. You know, that constant 24-hour news cycle, you do not need to follow blow by blow what's going on. It will not help you. So maybe have a whole day when you just don't tune in, because you don't need to know. If you're not a doctor, or if you're not directly concerned with the minutiae of how things are changing, you don't need to know that. Delete from your phone all the unhelpful social media apps, because social media makes you anxious. It's designed to be addictive, and when you don't get that fix, you get that buzz of anxiety, which makes you then reach for it. So Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is your thing is, you find yourself scrolling meaninglessly through it, just ask yourself, is there a clear and beneficial purpose to what I'm scrolling through right now? In other words, choose when you use. And if there isn't a clear and beneficial purpose for what you're scrolling through right now, stop. Step away from the phone, step away from the laptop. Give yourself sizable digital detox breaks. It will affect your anxiety level, and it's an act of kindness to yourself. So from that introductory place, then let's look at anxiety. So red blob, amygdala in charge, you'll react rather than respond. You feel maybe like you're holding up a boulder which is about to crash down on you. You feel powerless, you feel overwhelmed. The chemicals in your body are adrenaline and cortisol are at high levels, which alters your metabolism on the inside. Your heart rate is racing, you're breathing more shallowly, your blood pressure's gone up. And all of these things alter your perception of the world. So you tend to maybe get a little bit more upset about small things than you normally would. Somebody says something to you, maybe they say like, oh, you look nice today. And you kind of go in your head, what does that mean about what I was looking like yesterday? Do you know what I mean? And you tend to lock in your hearing to look for the sources of stuff that make you feel anxious. So it becomes a vicious circle. You hear things in a way that is skewed towards looking for threat and danger, which makes you kind of hold on to them. You like hyper focus and get stuck in sort of what I call thought traps. So if you notice that you're doing those things, that is the first step to being able to release the grip that they have on you. So as you notice, okay, these are signs and symptoms that I'm anxious, that the red blob is in charge. In order to notice that, you had to step into your green blob to have that awareness. And as you step into your prefrontal cortex and engage that, you're creating a sense of awareness of what's happening. You have a perspective on the world. I think this may be in the Peak District, I don't know, but the person is looking out with that sense of perspective and calm. You can see the bigger picture, so it's understandable. It's like, yep, we're locked in. There's a lot of uncertainty. Am I going back to work? Am I not going back to work? How long is it? It's like, okay, I can manage what I can manage. I can't manage what I can't manage. Great. How do I change things and create structures for myself that will help me deal with this? I can understand it. I can manage it. And more importantly, perhaps, I can look deeper inside myself and find out what makes this meaningful to me. So a fundamental shift in questioning of oneself, because I think when you're anxious, you tend to go, what's the matter with me? Or what's the matter with the world? We're looking for fault. We're looking more critically at the world. So shifting that question of what's the matter with me to one of what matters to me. It's like, what's important to me? Okay, my family are here, or I can ring them on the phone, or I've got a work that I really enjoy. But what are the things, my deep-seated values that I can connect with that give me that inner scaffolding, that regardless of how wobbly the scaffolding is outside in the world, I can come back to that with certainty in myself. So I'm creating certainty from the inside. And I think one of the fundamental shifts in this conversation is, rather than thinking that when I'm not anxious anymore, then I'll be okay, which is in itself a critical stance, is like, okay, I'm noticing feelings of anxiety or anger or irritation or whatever that emotion is. I'm noticing that. So if I'm noticing that, that means that I'm aware of it, so I can accept that that's what's happening right now, and I can adapt to that. And we're going to give you some very practical ways to adapt in a minute. But, as I'm talking, I just want to be aware, you to be aware of how are you feeling, like right now. Like just clocking in with yourself. Do you feel anxious? If so, why? Because you don't need to do anything except receive these messages and just giving yourself the moment, this sense of taking your time, unplugging from all the stuff that's going on in the rest of the world, if you like, of slowing down and taking a deep breath in and exhaling slowly. So the last thing I want is that whilst you're watching this webinar, that you feel anxious. So that green blob awareness, accepting that that's how it is right now, rather than judging yourself for that. And that acceptance is an act of kindness. And then just going, okay, how can I adapt to this, rather than push it away or change it? So what matters to me, rather than what's the matter with me? And it's interesting, in coming back to that theme of kindness, that as we engage our prefrontal cortex, that is where our higher or noble goals sit. And the more able we are to connect with that, the more that question of, am I safe, which is an individualistic question, extends to become something more like, how can we keep everyone safe? So we start to think more collectively rather than individualistically, which is interesting, isn't it? That we're wired to want to be compassionate and kind, and the ways in which our kindness or compassion can express themselves are through doing good for other people. And we'll touch back on this in a minute towards the end of the webinar. But if kindness is a way of being that counteracts anxiety, then that way of being expresses itself in doing. And the ways in which we do kindness are some of the following: gratitude, appreciation, generosity, forgiveness, acceptance. So that, again, that acceptance, that paradoxical notion that if I accept the way it is, that is the first step to powerful personal change. So moving back now to anxiety, but not so that it makes you anxious. What we're talking about is being able to spot it in order that we can release it in the moment. And we're going to do an exercise that you can practice yourselves. And in order that in the long term, we can start doing stuff ourselves to, on a regular basis, accept that we will get anxious, is what happens. We will get stress arising in the system. We will get irritable. If I spot it, I can continuously have this sense of dialing it down. So that if your normal is kind of up here on a scale of, like anxiety or stress, the more I do about dialing it down on a regular basis, my normal will over time also become lower. So I find myself feeling less anxious and less stressed by the same situation. So we're going to talk about anxiety, but let's, just monitor that sense of what's going on with me right now. So look at these two lists. I'm not going to insult your intelligence by reading through the two lists. Just take a look and notice what jumps out at you. Where do you specialize? How does anxiety express itself for you, mostly? And just make a little note to yourself. What are the signs that you could notice in your body, because that's where it starts, that would tell you, okay, feelings of anxiety are rising, so you can spot it. For some people, it's a bit of a sort of breakthrough moment to realize that the heart beating stronger, or that tight band across the chest, or that feeling of nausea or wanting to go to the loo more often is actually what we would label the emotion of anxiety. So there's something about being able to spot it, being able to recognize it and label it as such, that helps us step back into that prefrontal cortex or green blob mode. So for me, I notice I get tingly in my hands and feet if I'm doing a big presentation or at a conference doing a keynote speech. I might notice that I want to go to the loo, but actually there's no need. Those little signs that tell me, okay, maybe I am a bit anxious. It starts in the body. So being aware of your body, being in tune with that, will help you spot it, be able to label it, so that you can then release it. The symptoms, in other words, the way it changes your behavior, are more that you might feel more on edge, you might feel more alert, like somebody drops something and you startle. What's called the startle reflex is a little bit exaggerated. You may notice that your sense of time is either speeded up or slowed down. It's like a sense of sort of surrealism. And I know that at the moment, personally, my sense of time, I think it's Wednesday today, but on Monday, I called one of my one-to-one people because I thought it was Tuesday and I thought we got a session. I thought, and she said, no, it's Monday. So, that's normal. These are normal reactions to challenging circumstances. But beware of how your thoughts can run away with you. And when you're anxious, you tend to catastrophize. It's like more and more, God, what if that happens? And if that happens, oh my goodness. And you disappear down a tunnel of thoughts that makes you more anxious in itself. And this is characteristic of anxiety, isn't it? That your thoughts themselves feed each other. So your thoughts start racing and you fall into what I call thought traps. And quite often the nature of those thoughts may be quite critical or quite fault finding, either with yourself or with other people or with a situation. You're looking for blame. So if you notice that you're having a lot of blame thoughts or a lot of critical thoughts or a little fault-finding thoughts, these are characteristics of being in a state of anxiety. So again, ways to help you spot that, label it so that you can release it. So we've talked a little bit about engaging the green blob, what's also called the executive function in your brain. Let's take a closer look at how we can do that. So we've talked about how to spot, okay, this is anxiety arising, how to accept that that is what's happening right now so that I can then release it. And I think there are 3 kind of ways in which we can cognitively, if you like, or through our conscious awareness, think our way out of this. One is, what do I need to feel safer? What can I do what can I be certain of? And the third one is then, how can I spread good vibes, which doesn't mean just happiness, but it's like, yeah, this is okay. Acceptance and kindness are good vibes. So coming back to that idea of what's happening with me right now and that grounding in your body. So if you right now just feel your feet on the floor, untangle your arms and your legs, have that sense of pulling up through the spine, have an awareness of your breathing, and just notice what happened in the last 5 minutes since I first talked about that. Did you tangle up again and go tense? Did you stop breathing deeply? So constantly remind yourself to be in your body and to breathe. And this is how you can bring yourself back into what I call your balanced zone. So it's not about whether you're anxious or not. It's about, can you be aware of that and be aware of when you're putting your foot on the gas and going into hyper-arousal. It's like, ah, or the opposite reaction that happens for some people when they get anxious, which is hypo-arousal, which is like zoning out, foot on the brake. It's like, I'm not quite here, I can't quite listen, I can't quite hear what people are saying, I'm not really thinking straight. So zoning out or firing up the engine. So bringing yourself back into that balanced zone where you're present by being aware of what's happening in your body. So be in your body and breathe. You know, that's the only thing you remember from this webinar. I will be really happy, because if you be in your body and breathe, you're grounding yourself in the present moment. And that is your green blob going, okay, I'm here. And as you do that, it calms down your nervous system. So as we calm down the nervous system, the green blob is coming back in online, as it were, and we're more able to be aware of what's happening with us, right? That self-awareness, like, what thoughts am I having? So being aware of the thoughts rather than being stuck in the middle of them as if they were real. We can't do that when we're in red blob mode. We need to engage the prefrontal cortex, kind of go, I'm noticing this thought that, right? Or how am I feeling? Okay, I'm noticing feelings of anxiety arising. What sensations are arising in my body? So this little triad, 3 sort of line questioning. What is happening right now? What thoughts are you having? How are you feeling? What sensations are arising in your body? Being aware of those, accepting that is how it is. To whom is that happening? Interesting. And who is noticing that? So rather than being sucked into those thoughts, it's like, I'm noticing that I'm having that thought. That's you putting yourself back in the driving seat and creating coherence in your nervous system. So what's happening in your body right now? Just asking yourself, like, how can I be aware of the sensations that are arising in my body? Just check it through, from your feet, through your legs, through your tummy, through your back and your shoulders, and your face. What does it feel like? Now I invite you to remember a feeling of peacefulness, or a feeling of kindness when somebody was kind to you, or maybe you were kind with somebody else. You shared a moment of kindness, or a feeling of being at ease. You know, that lovely picture of the beach, the clouds, the waves gently rippling on the shore. So remembering and bringing to mind that feeling of peacefulness or being at ease, and allowing that feeling to spread through your body right now. Good, okay. It's interesting, isn't it? These are muscles that we can exercise where we're intentionally altering our internal state through that function of our self-awareness. And as we do that, the more we do it, the more we're taking back control, if you like, of whatever we noticed, which might have been a state of anxiety or irritation, bringing that compassion and kindness back to ourselves. So this slide is a picture of what happens in your nervous system throughout your body, but in particular how your heartbeat varies over time. So when you're frazzled or anxious or stressed or in a state of frustration, the internal chaos in your system, which makes it difficult for you to think, because it's all connected, makes your heart rate variability look like that red line. Bit chaotic, bit all over the place. When we take a deep breath in, and we're going to do a short exercise together in a minute so that you can then practice on your own on a regular basis, what happens is through our breathing, we're stimulating a nerve called the vagus nerve, which goes all around the inside of your body, sends messages back up to that red blob to go, actually, there is no threat out there. Right now, I'm safe. Interesting. So through your breathing, deep breath in, exhale slowly, feet on the ground, open up down the front of your body. You're literally sending messages from your body back up to your brain to help yourself feel safe on the inside. So, yep, I'm safe. My inner scaffolding is there. So let's take a moment to do this exercise together. So I've got my legs crossed on the chair, actually, because that's how I prefer to sit. So I'm just going to uncross my legs off the chair and put my feet on the floor. I'm going to invite you to do the same thing. So putting your feet about hip width apart on the floor, untangling your arms and letting your hands either rest on your lap or one on top of each other, on your legs, on your thighs. Close your eyes or just lower your gaze, whichever feels comfortable for you. Just notice what's happening with you right now. Be okay about that. And now focusing your attention, and it's easier if you close your eyes to do this. So focus your attention on the area of your chest where your heart is. And imagine that your breath is flowing into and out of your heart to the count of 5 in and 5 out. So 5 in and 5 out. And finding a rhythm that feels good for you. Good. So imagining your breath flowing into and out of your heart to the count of 5 in and 5 out. And slowing and deepening that rhythm in a way that feels comfortable for you. Good. So coming to the end of having done that for about a minute, now take a really deep breath in, right down to the bottom of your tummy. And exhale fully, really squeezing out all the stale air from your lungs. And as you take another really deep breath in, bring your hands up above your head, stretching up towards the ceiling, giving your hands a really, really, really good shake and bringing them back down onto your lap. Good. And just noticing how you're feeling right now. being okay about whatever that is. You may feel a little calmer, you may not. That's okay. There's no right or wrong way to do that. But basically what you're doing is exercising that prefrontal cortex, expanding your lungs, sending messages back up to that red blob, calming down the system so that instead of the jiggity jaggedy red line, you're more likely to have that nice, calm, smoother blue line. And the interesting thing about that is this word coherence, that we know that when the physiological changes in your body are in chaos, that then your emotional state is more in turmoil, and that makes it more difficult for you to think coherently. So it starts in the body, creates an emotional response, which then alters your cognitive functioning. So it's very difficult for somebody to alter the way they're thinking if they're still in chaos in their body. So, you know, it's like, I mustn't have that thought. I shouldn't be doing that. I really don't want to feel anxious. I wish I wasn't feeling anxious. That is like a cognitive battle, which is going nowhere. And it's a bit like a knot in a piece of string. You're just pulling that knot tighter and tighter. So if you notice you're doing that, like trying to alter your thinking through your anxious thinking, just take a moment to be in your body and breathe. Like unplug, slow down, and breathe. If you practice this little exercise, sorry to flip back, I know that makes some of you feel a little anxious, apologize for that. But if you practice this exercise that we did for 1 minute, if you practice it for like 5 minutes a day, in the morning and the evening, what you're literally doing is resetting your thermostat, as it were, to a lower level. So your normal is lower than it was. For most of us, our normal is kind of up here somewhere. And that's what we're used to, and we think that's okay. But actually, the more you practice doing these very simple exercises, the more you're altering and rebalancing your nervous system to a lower level of frazzle. So greater self-awareness through the body, which allows you to be able to notice what thoughts you're having more easily, and therefore be able to go, I wonder what thought I'm having right now. Oh, that's an interesting thought. Is that real? Is it true? Probably not. It's probably just my brain on autopilot. It's like, I'm no good. I can't do this. This is really bad. That sort of self-critical voice that a lot of us had, just sort of seeing that as like a radio station that's on autopilot, just sort of tuning that in out by engaging your green blob, by engaging your breathing. And as we do this more and more, and I do recommend that as a group, as a team, you know, I have whole companies now that start every meeting with 1 minute of that little exercise that we just did. And particularly now, you know, when we're getting Zoom fatigue and we're not moving enough, we're not breathing properly anymore. If you just instigate that one simple measure, just let me know how that changes, how you feel about things and how you get your job done. It'd be a really interesting little piece of research, but I recommend that you start doing that, because as you do it, you're exercising your brain, just like you exercise muscles when you go to the gym. And over time, that red blob, the amygdala, actually gets smaller. So you're less likely to react to the same situation or stimulus in a way that is reactive, defensive, overreacting. Whilst meanwhile, that green blob actually gets bigger and more active. So you're literally increasing the size and the function of the area of the brain that allows you to have self-awareness. That's why we do these things. So the sense of restoring safety. We've talked about how I can do that in the present moment through my breathing. Be in your body and breathe. Unplug, slow down, breathe. Into the count of 5, out to the count of 5. Stretch your arms up, shake your arms on a regular basis. So this idea of restoring safety, we're talking about creating that inner scaffolding. That means you're less likely to feel discombobulated or inner wobbliness when the external scaffolding is uncertain, which it is at the moment. So the analogy here is that of bamboo. When my dad was in the Air Force, so, from a very early age, in fact, I was born in Malta, went to live in Cyprus, travel around the world, like every 2 years, new place to live. So that kind of sense of uncertainty was almost like my default setting. So I got used to change, which means I'm actually quite good at adapting to change, but I'm not very good at being settled. But I remember when we went to live in Singapore when I was 17, and the monsoons would come. We lived on the edge, in a bungalow on the edge of the Johor Straits, and the Johor Straits look out towards Malaysia, and the monsoon rains would come, and you literally couldn't see anything because the rains were so ferocious and the wind was like, incredible. We've never experienced anything like it in this country. And the bamboo down on the beach, I would think like, oh my goodness, it's getting flattened. But 2 hours later, I'd go down back onto the beach, and the bamboo was back like this. Right. And I know like my hands look very big when I do that in front of the camera, but, just that general idea of being connected to something that is enduring, your inner resources inside yourself, your inner resources, and knowing how to bring yourself back to a place of balance so that you can adapt more readily and with greater ease, if you like, or greater grace to whatever life is throwing at you. Is like being like bamboo. The monsoon rain comes or a bit of a breeze, whatever, and here I am, I can bring myself back to this position of connected balance, I'm adapting. So that little ABC, if you can remember that, adapt, balance, connect. Connecting to something inside yourself that is durable, reliable, gives you a sense of certainty. In terms of working together, when I do a lot of the work I do around mental health in the workplace, one of my favorite words that I'm not too fond of is resilience, because it makes it look like it's me that's got to toughen up, when actually what we know about resilience is that it's interpersonal. And the factors that make us resilient, that make us like bamboo, are basically the positive regard of others, that I feel valued, that I feel respected, that I feel like I belong, that the network around me, the social network, even though we're physically distanced, we can be emotionally connected. And I know a lot of you are doing a lot of stuff. With Randstad, I've done quite a lot of work, and I really admire the work that you've done to maintain that sense of cohesion or, connectedness, so that people feel like they belong. That you feel that you can participate as an equal, nobody's looking up to you, nobody's looking down on you, that psychological safety that means that I matter to others who matter to me. And that even though stuff is changing and there is a structure that we need, I do have a sense of my own personal autonomy. There's a possibility for me to do better. So this is how we can help each other feel safe. What can we be certain of? Yeah, I can count on you to give me that, and you can count on me to treat me with value and respect. And then another aspect of those inner resources or that inner scaffolding is to be aware of what got you through a challenging situation previously. So most of us, have been through challenging such situations in our lives before, but we maybe haven't taken time out to look back. And this is an exercise that you can do together on your own. Take a screen grab of this screen if you want. If I do a workshop, we have more time to do this together. But just think of it like this. It's like, what strategy did I employ to get me through that difficult situation? Because I clearly got through it because I'm here now. We tend not to think about that. So what practical steps did I take to get me through? What strengths did I maybe surprise myself that I showed? What did I draw upon inside myself to get myself through that challenging situation? And indeed, what are the resources that you're pulling on inside yourself right now to help yourself get through? For some of us, we see a lot of opportunity, that we're more peaceful on the inside. I'm actually, really committed to taking better care of my physical health than I ever have been, or taking care of my mental health than I ever, cultivating good habits. What strengths can I pull out of myself? What resources did I use in that challenging time previously to gain support? What gave me courage? What did I get inspiration from that helped me get through? And then also looking back at that challenging time, which you clearly already got through, what did you learn about people, about yourself, about the world? What were your insights? So I welcome, take away that and use it as a little exercise that you can do for yourself or with other people in your teams to build the team cohesion as we get to know each other better in these challenging situations. But how do we spread good vibes? So this is a little quote from somebody who actually used to work at Harvard Business School. And it's basically said that this is a time when managers need to be flexible and compassionate. That's that kindness word again, isn't it? And to give people the freedom to make choices about when they work, how they work, where they work, and with whom they work. Now, obviously, that's got limitations, but if we have that sense of trusting people, respecting their autonomy, it's like, how do you want to do this? Does that work for you? Respecting that everybody's different, but you do have to have that structure. How can we negotiate and collaborate, which is a function of that kindness? It's not about being happy. Happy is a spin-off of being intentionally kind. Kindness is a function of your prefrontal cortex. It's an intentional desire to be a certain way in life, which then leads to what we call pro-social behavior. Pro-social behavior, clearly the opposite of antisocial behavior. It means, saying thank you. It means appreciating rather than taking for granted. It means being generous with our time or our listening or, our material goods even. In my street, I live in South London. Some people are hanging like plastic bags with food in on the outside or, on the street so that people can come along and anonymously just take food if they want to. Some of you might go, well, it'll get pinched, won't it? Well, we have to trust each other. And if you're in need, you can come and you can take that. Forgiveness. Forgiveness is an act of kindness to yourself. It doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means letting go of the grievance or the upset or the resentment. And it comes back to accepting that this is the way it is. Feelings of anxiety arising. How can I be okay about that rather than bash myself up around that? And the interesting thing is that as I've learned more about, the interpersonal neurobiology, that the human being is actually designed to be at their best, both physically and emotionally and mentally, when exhibiting behaviors that promote social cohesion, the release of oxytocin. I do a whole webinar on how that works. So doing good does you good. So coming to the end of this, another little sort of practical tip is around your communications, creating coherence in your system and in the system of how you connect with others and with the world. It's like, be curious. It's like, what's going on over there, rather than being critical. Be careful and respectful about how you respond or act or behave towards others or speak, rather than being crushing. Ask rather than assume. It's like, I think I know what's going on with you, but actually I better ask and check out what that is. And if you need to sort of adjust what's going on, or even with yourself, it's like connect emotionally before you correct. So getting that background of relatedness, so the kindness that you are intending communicates itself, people feel more at ease, the green blob is in charge, the red bulb calms down, psychological safety, people feel a whole lot better. All right, so we're coming to the end of the session. Going to leave you with this nice picture. It's like, just having fun together. I'll be really interested to hear if there are any questions or thoughts, but just taking a moment now for yourself to think, like, what is my main takeaway from all of this? What stuck out for me? How am I going to do things differently? Either stop doing something or start doing something to actually bring that sense of kindness to me. So I can bring that kindness to other people as a major antidote, actually, to anxiety, inner wobbliness, irritation, all those feelings that we all naturally feeling more of at the moment. So I'm just going to, there is about 30 seconds, but these are extra slides that I put in there that we can snip back to depending on what the questions people have are. This is a little quote from the Dalai Lama, which says, like, whenever possible, be kind. It's always possible. So that's interesting, isn't it? We can always engage the green blob, intentionally choose kindness as a way of being that informs how we do stuff. So Graham, we've got a few more minutes, I think, left on the clock. Do we have any questions from people?
Thank you so much. That was a really good session. I actually tracked my heart rate through the exercise, and it dropped to the lowest point of the day. So proof that it works. So thank you very much. That was really, really good.
That's really good to know. Yeah, please keep doing that.
It will do. So yes, we've had some really good questions come through actually. So let me just go through a couple of them.
Yeah.
So the first one, which is one that I can certainly relate to. I'm trying to homeschool 2 kids under 10 and work full time from home. I feel anxious and guilty that I can't teach them properly and that it's going to impact their lives. What can I do?
Such a good question, isn't it? And I think that speaks back to what we were talking about earlier in the webinar, which is that tendency to be very self-critical when our own system is in a state of stress, right? That self-critical voice, which is, I feel guilty. Am I damaging my kids? Basically, what I hear is red blob in charge. That if you actually take a moment to step back, and that picture of the person standing on a hill overlooking what I think might be the Lake District, it might be Umbria, I don't know, having that sense of perspective to kind of go, what matters actually? So again, that shift from the question of what's the matter with me? Oh, I'm such a bad parent, I'm damaging my kid, which I know, I've got 3 kids, I've been not through this situation, but that's what parenting seems to be about a lot, is guilt. Your kids will grow up the way they grow up. And a few months of not being in school and not having the perfect academic input, believe you me, as a professional person, and putting my psychiatric hat on now, is not going to damage their mental health. It really isn't. And the more you can adapt your expectations of what you think you're supposed to do, both in terms of your work and in terms of what your kids are supposed to do, that vibe, if you like, is going to release a lot of pressure on you and on the kids. So they're not going to pick up that anxiety. And it's like, oh, mum's getting really stressed out. How many times you hear kids saying that, oh, mum's really stressed out at the moment, or, they feel it. So there's something about recognizing that when you feel that anxiety and that guilt, that is red blob takeover. So what you can do to address that chaos in your own system, to re-engage the green blob, to create coherence in your own system, that will spread to your kids. They'll feel calmer. You will have a greater sense of perspective and probably be a whole lot kinder to yourself and to your kids in terms of what your expectations of yourself are. The paradoxical thing about that is you'll probably get more done because a lot of energy goes into that self-critical voice. It's like, I can't do this. That takes a lot of energy and attention, actually. So it's all about being present and being kind. I hope that answers the question to some extent.
Excellent. Yeah, very good advice. Thank you.
All right.
The next one is, if you see someone who you think is struggling with their mental health, what advice would you give on how to approach this?
Right. That's such a good question. I mean, if we had a poll here, and I could ask you to raise your hands to sort of ask you, like, how many of you actually feel quite anxious or like, ooh, gosh, yeah, what do I do? Part of the work that I do around mental health in the workplace is to really help people recognize that approach is probably what gets in the way, that we all need to get a whole lot more comfortable about recognizing that there's no such thing as okay. It's not just that it's okay to be not okay. Who the heck says what okay is in the first place? And at the moment, I think a lot of us are understandably maybe surprised at our own emotionality or our own inability to focus and all of that kind of stuff, and own sort of levels of distress on the inside. But because we've got a common source of distress, it's kind of like, okay, well, that's okay then. I understand, I'm more accepting of that. But if you think that actually that's always true, that somebody who's in distress on the inside may have a source of distress that they don't share with you. And just as you would like somebody to maybe ask you, are you okay? You know, what's distressing you at the moment? You know, I know what's distressing me, but is that true for you? How can I support you? What do you need? You know, recognizing our own distress as a way of kind of going like, okay, how can I have that courage? And kindness is a courageous act of strength in my part, to put aside your own anxiety and kind of go, okay, I'm going to ask them. Because that's what is needed, is that we let go of this idea that some of us are okay and some of us are not okay. That it's not just okay to feel not okay. It's normal to feel not okay. And who says what okay is anyway? So if you notice or you suspect that somebody is in deeper distress, please open a conversation with them about that. You will not damage anybody by asking. Be gentle, be kind, be appropriate, calm yourself down before you do that, but have the courage and the strength of character to extend that hand of kindness and go on. Hey, how are you doing at the moment? Genuine, open, honest. It will never land wrong.
Excellent. Thank you. Very good answer.
Right.
Okay, so the next one is, what advice would you offer for people living alone?
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, these great, really great questions, by the way. Thank you so much for the questions. I think it depends on your personality. You know, I'm a bit of a recluse and I handle being on my own. You know, I've actually done 7-day retreats and I love it, you know, so I handle being on my own better than the sort of very gregarious, outgoing person who needs a lot of input for stuff. So first of all, just make a really honest assessment for yourself of what is good for you and what isn't good for you. There's a really nice kind of idea around getting your 5 a day. So we're used to that idea of the 5 a day in terms of you've got to eat your fruit and your veg. And also getting your 5 a day in terms of your emotional nourishment. Living on your own in this time is difficult. The lockdown is releasing itself slowly. Might be a good idea, might not, but make efforts to keep in contact with people and get your 5 a day. Again, you know, making a real, I'm not quite sure if effort that is the right word, but committing to your own well-being by saying, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to take time out every day to do my 5 minutes of unplug, slow down, breathe. Breathe into the count of 5, out to the count of 5. And if you notice you're getting panicky, you're feeling lonely, don't let those feelings overwhelm you. But again, the same principle of noticing it, spotting it, labeling it. Okay, feelings of loneliness arising. What can I do about that? Rather than getting swamped in it, regulating your own nervous system to come back to that inner scaffolding, and then maybe taking action to kind of email somebody or reach out and kind of go, mate, I'm feeling a bit, you know, this is getting a bit tough right now, because there's so many people out there who want to connect. And when we get into that lonely place, we tend to maybe go into, it's like, oh gosh, I can't, you know, don't do that. Don't go into self-pity, like always try to take action. And as we're allowed to meet up, but still socially distance, like organize those little ways of meeting with people. But watch out, if you're a manager or a leader, watch out for this in your teams, that often the person who is least likely to speak about their distress is the one who most needs somebody to kind of go, you all right? Are you struggling? How are you coping? On a one-to-one basis. So I hope that helps answer the question a little bit.
Excellent. Thank you. I like that. Emotional 5 a day. We'll use that. I think that's a very, very good concept. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it, Graham? As you say, so how can you build this into how you're going to move forward now with this new stage of where we're at with this?
Yeah, very good. Excellent. Thank you.
We've got time for one more question, perhaps.
Yeah, next question. So this is always an interesting one. Should I try and get my family to do mindfulness with me?
Definitely. I mean, definitely. You know, I've got 3 kids. They're all grown up now. I'm lucky enough to have 2 of them living with me in the house. But yeah, we do this together, and you can even do it virtually together as a team, because it's incredibly powerful. You know, to share that space of silence actually is a really magical thing. And I'm not saying that in a kind of woo-woo way. It's like that we know enough about how the brain works and how emotions work, that if you actually share those quiet moments together, what's interesting is your heartbeats actually start to synchronize. And, you know, we can do this by measuring people's heart rate variability, putting a little thing on their ears, but actually taking time out together to say, okay, let's just have a quiet moment. Kids as young as 5 and 6 can do this. You know, I do it with my grandchildren when they're around, but I would absolutely encourage doing it together with other people. I mean, that is the basis of all the ancient wisdom practices anyway. You don't do it on your own, you do it in a community, and that makes it more powerful.
Excellent. Can we squeeze one more quick question in? We've got
Go on, let's squeeze one more in. Yeah.
Well, one more in. Are there any further resources or supports that you would recommend for kind of ongoing support and kind of keeping up to date with some techniques, etc.? What would you recommend?
Yeah, there's an absolute plethora of them on the internet now. You know, 10 years ago, not very much. I've got my book there, the Mindfulness Playbook, which is full of all this stuff. There's an app which is very popular, which many of you will know about, which is called the Headspace app. There's another app which is called Calm, which offers a whole range of different tools and techniques for people. And I think the most important thing is to find out what works for you, because everybody's different. And people have this kind of notion that mindfulness just means being present. So whenever you just take that moment to slow down and go, what is happening with me right now? What thoughts am I having? What feelings are arising? What sensations are in my body? What is happening? To whom is that happening? Who is noticing that? That is you building that muscle of your self-awareness, which is what all of this is about. And it's not rocket science. It just takes 30 seconds. But those apps will give you more structured ways of doing that. But please find what works for you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we are out of time, I think, but that was it's a really insightful and very, very inspiring. So thank you so much for taking time out to talk to us today, and that's been exceptionally useful. Thank you very, very much.
And thank you everybody who is listening. And kindness is the theme, so go forth and be kind. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
Human Forward. Randstad.